Yesterday, we saw the beginning of the Trump impeachment. We look at arguments made by both sides, the procedures being done in this impeachment, as well as the potential outcomes. This is your Not So News update. Starting us off from Red State, they go into essentially what was the first day of Trump's impeachment that was predicted about a week ago by Rand Paul. Rand Paul has initially made the argument that this impeachment is unconstitutional as it's going after a former president. In Red State, they state the following, going at how some Democrats have agreed with Paul's point. Paul has also pointed out how the trial is not constitutional, noting that 45 Republicans have indicated that they didn't think that it was even a legitimate proceeding, so that the proceeding was basically over before it started. He forced a vote last month on the constitutionality of it, and 45 senators refused to agree it was even constitutional to proceed. So Paul said there was zero chance of a conviction. When you have that high of a number of Republicans who didn't even think it was right to go forward procedurally, there's no way of getting a 2/3 vote or 67% needed to convict. Now, even a very powerful partisan, Democrat Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, admits that Paul is making a reasonable point. According to Fox, I admit this is, of course, a matter of first impressions, and so I don't think the case that Senator Paul is making is a ridiculous one. He said, although naturally he was supporting the contention that they had the right to proceed. Murphy acknowledges it's never been done before and the question hasn't been determined in the courts, but the obvious purpose of impeachment is removal, the blocking from office a secondary thought. If a president is no longer in office, then the only reason you're still going after him is political. But Dems don't care and are going to spend taxpayers' money to try and eliminate the political competition for 2024 and or smear him and the Republicans as much as they can. Really, this just hits something we've been saying going on. There's three questions with this impeachment. One, do you have the ability to impeach a former president? Or is this impeachment trial a continuation of the impeachment of President Trump? That was the argument that was made by the House managers. The issue is if this is a continuation of the presidency of Trump in the impeachment hearing, then the Chief Justice should be the one to overhear the proceedings by the constitutional law. Instead, we've seen that the Senate President pro tempore, Leahy from Connecticut, who's is going to be presiding over the impeachment as he is the most senior senator. Here is a letter that he wrote to his colleagues. Dear colleague, later today, the Senate will convene not as a civil or criminal court, but as a separate constitutional court of impeachment. All 100 senators will sit, in the words of Chief Justice Rehnquist, not simply as a jury, but as a court in this case. As many of you know, I did not ask or seek to preside over this trial, yet while I occupy the constitutional office of the President pro tempore, it is incumbent upon me to do so. After reviewing the Constitution, Senate rules and proceeding, and after consulting with the parliamentarian, I would like to inform all senators and parties how I intend to conduct these proceedings. My intention and solemn obligation is to conduct this trial with fairness to all. I will adhere, as have my proceedings in the Senate, who have presided over impeachment trials, to the Constitution and to applicable Senate rules, precedent, and governing resolutions. Should a motion, objection, request, or application related to the procedure of the Senate or to the trial be put before me, I will consult with the parliamentarian and be guided by the Senate precedent. Any decision I make from the chair will be subject to the review of the full Senate. I also intend to put a matter before the entire Senate in the first instance where appropriate in light of the precedents and practices of the Senate, giving all senators an equal say in resolving the issue at the outset. Consistent with the Senate precedent, should a constitutional question be put before me, I will also immediately submit it to the entire Senate as I already have during this trial. As have past presiding officers, I will enforce the Senate rules and precedents governing decorum and do what I can to ensure this trial reflects the best traditions of the Senate, consistent with the oath of each senator took to do impartial justice according to Constitution and law. Sincerely, Patrick Leahy. This actually, in my opinion, is a really good for Republicans to know that. I mean, yes, there is, a bit of lip service given to being impartial during these types of trials. They're obviously political in nature. I'm assuming 90 or more percent of the Senate already has their decision made. However, it's good to know that there's at least going to be a precedent and Leahy has given his voice that he plans on taking any really contentious questions to the Senate overall, which is, I think, a good sign for everyone involved. And just, I think this is a good letter and promotes democracy. CNN gave a update on the first day of impeachment and gave some info on essentially what happened. Starting us off, the House impeachment managers said that their case was based on cold, hard facts. They have the following quote: "They want to call the trial over before any evidence is even introduced. Their argument is that if you commit an impeachable offense in your last few weeks in office, you do it with constitutional impunity. You get away with it." And next, they go into the First Amendment and look into what is protected by the First Amendment and if Trump's speech would have been protected. As both sides make the case, CNN gives the following First Amendment from the Constitution. "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging of freedom of speech or in the press, or the right of people to peacefully assemble and to petition the governments for a redress of grievances." Sorry. That's the entirety of the First Amendment. Normally when we're referencing the First Amendment, we're also referencing the case law behind that. I'm no lawyer or really familiar with case law, but that's really kind of where you get a lot of the legislation. Earlier today, we had the Senate vote on the rules of the trial. I believe it was an 89-11 vote, and these are the following rules for the trial. After 4 hours of debate today, which was yesterday, February 9th, on the constitutionality question, there will be a vote at a simple majority there hold to affirm the proceedings' constitutionality. After that, each side has up to 16 hours per presentation. There are 4 hours for senator questions. If there's a request for witness by House impeachment managers, there will be 2 hours of debate after the question period, followed by a vote on whether to call a witness. There will then be 4 hours of closing arguments, evenly divided, and then a vote on conviction or acquittal. Later on, the GOP senators discussed that there's a possibility that the trial could be end by Saturday. They also made a statement earlier that if needed, they will be doing the procedure on Sunday. They had the start of the formal trial. And then they finally give the impeachment managers, who are Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland, Deanna DeGrette of Colorado, David Cicilline of Rhode Island, Jaquan Castro of Texas, Eric Swaldwell of California, Ted Lieu of California, Stacey Plaskett of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Joe Leguse of Colorado, and Madeline Dean of Pennsylvania. And then this is what started the impeachment debates. After hearing the arguments, the AP reports that the Senate agrees to hear the Trump case. It ended up being, I believe, a 56-44 vote, noting that one Republican did join the Democrats since the last vote, which was done in the month ago hearings that we previously talked about with Rand Paul. AP reports the following. The first test Tuesday was on the constitutionality of the trial, signaling attitudes in the Senate. 6 Republicans joined with Democrats pursue the trial, just one more than on a similar vote last week. Bill Cassidy of Louisiana added to the ranks of Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Mitt Romney of Utah, Ben Sasse of Nebraska, and Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. Finally, the AP reports that Republicans were criticizing the Trump lawyer performance. From the image here, we have Bruce Castor, who's one of the attorneys for former President Trump. I just listened to his opening argument, and he essentially rambled for what seemed like about a half hour straight. The AP reports the following. Senate Republicans had sharp criticism for former President Donald Trump's lawyers after the opening of his second impeachment trial. Many said they didn't understand Trump's lawyers' arguments as they sought to persuade the Senate to dismiss the trial on constitutional grounds. Trump was impeached by the House for inciting the January 6th insurrection of the Capitol. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, who we just mentioned, who voted with Democrats to move forward with the trial after voting against them in a similar vote 2 weeks ago, said Trump's team did a terrible job, was disorganized, random, and did everything they could but to talk about the question at hand. Maine Senator Susan Collins, who also voted with the Democrats, said she was perplexed by lead Trump lawyer Bruce Castor, who did not seem to make any arguments at all, which was an unusual approach to take. Texas Senator Ted Cruz, one of Trump's staunchest allies, said he didn't think the lawyers did the most effective job, while praising Maryland Rep. Jamie Raskin, of Democrats' lead prosecutor, as impressive. Senator John Cornyn of Texas said Castor just rambled on and on and on. Both still voted to dismiss the trial along with 42 other Republican senators. As for a response to the GOP criticism, Castor said, "We had a good day." Another Trump lawyer, David Strachan, told the reporters, "I always hope to improve." They go into essentially what we have to continue on for this impeachment, which begins looking at the question of the First Amendment, Trump's incitement of the insurrection, and whether his language was protected. Finally, I want to conclude with this question essentially asked by the Daily Beast in an opinion piece called "Real Conservatives Want the Senate to Convict Donald Trump." In it, they have, "I remember when Republicans were the party of law and order. These senators should be ashamed of themselves. For most of my life, conservatives have advocated law and order and peace through strength. People who commit evil acts should be punished," we said, "to deter that kind of behavior in the future. Allowing bad actors to go unpunished, the assumption one creates a moral hazard just as weakness invites additional provocation. So why do today's conservatives think a president who incited a mob to kill a cop and injured others should skate?" In the same words, conservatives who would be the first in line support holding Donald Trump, who obviously incited the insurrection, accountable for his behavior. Unfortunately, we have seen quite the opposite, with a few notable exceptions. Why should today's conservatives hearken back to a saner time and hold Trump accountable for his actions? For one thing, stakes are high. We have to take a stand to ensure no future president attempts to replicate Trump's playbook. You would think the patriotic conservatives would be 100% behind this. There's a couple questions asked in this that I think we can give what I think the conservative Republican answer is. The first is this question: why do today's conservatives think a president who incited a mob to kill a cop and injured others should skate? The obvious answer here is they don't think Trump incited the mob, or specifically incited a mob to kill a cop. Incited the mob to kill a cop, sorry. And that's really the question of the trial, is whether he incited it or not. I think if you look at language used in political discourse, it's really been rapidly increasing in the last decade or so, at least since I've been involved in politics, of getting more and more violent in our language in politics. And I think, honestly, Trump is just a continuation of that. Next, we see, why should today's conservatives harken back at a saner time and hold Trump accountable for his actions? So there's a question of how to hold someone accountable for their actions. Generally, impeachment is done to take someone out of office. I know they earlier mentioned how this is a continuation of the impeachment done by the House while Trump was still in office, and I think there's a legitimate argument there. However, there's other ways that we go about holding people accountable. Notably, we have a criminal justice system. At this point, the DOJ and DC prosecutors have not charged Trump, which I can only assume so far that they don't think his language goes against the protected speech of the First Amendment. If he did call for inciting a mob to kill a cop, that would break the First Amendment and be prosecutable. However, I have not seen the judicial system take that take. If you do believe that that's the case, you should be asking the Joe Biden administration to use the DOJ to prosecute Trump. You should be reaching out to the DC prosecutor's office, the DC mayor, to hold Trump accountable. What you're going to unfortunately find is that Trump's language was protected by the First Amendment. And at that point, the impeachment trial is mute. This is your February 10th Not So News update. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video or learned something new. Have a good one.